It's You're All Doomed, the podcast that sails through Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, 13 minutes at a time. I'm Prom Queen Greg.
And I'm Brian.
And this chunk begins with Tamara's reflection as she's about to snort her cocaine and ends with certainly the best of our screenshots in this series so far, with Jason wielding a shard of glass like a knife.
As Tamara's diving into the cocaine-filled mirror, she says, "Nighttime is the right time," which leads me to believe that Tamara's probably a little bit of a cokehead.
Yeah, and it had a creepy reference for me as a true crime fan. It's very similar to something that the serial killer Rodney Alcala said when he appeared on an episode of the 1970s game show The Dating Game. He was Bachelor number 1, and the contestant asked him what his favorite time of day is. He said, "Nighttime, baby." She said, "Well, what about morning time or daytime?" And he said, "Those are all right, but nighttime is the right time." He actually was chosen. He won the game, but she refused to go on the date with him because he was so creepy. You can actually watch that episode on YouTube. It's rather unsettling.
So as Tamara's chopping up lines of coke, she tries to convince Eva to do a line, but she's not interested because she's concerned about losing her science scholarship.
Even though it's top dollar toot?
Right.
Yeah, why is the prom queen hanging out with a big book nerd? That seems like a mix of social strata that I don't remember happening much in high school.
Yeah, that's true. You're not going to see that crossover very often. It's kind of like, it's quite literally the nerd and the prom queen, which is usually what's made fun of in movies.
Rennie, who is still out looking for Gordon/Toby, comes upon them and surprises them. They offer her some of the cocaine, but she, rather judgmentally, I thought, says, "No thanks," and then leaves again. She narrowly misses bumping into Jason, who has just crept out of the game room. He walks past a perfectly good set of darts that are in a target on the wall. Apparently these were used in a kill that later got deleted, but now it's just kind of a wasted moment.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of potential with him in the game room, whether it's like a pool cue or, like you mentioned, the darts. It's kind of a shame that they had him in that room and then weren't able to take advantage of anything that he could have found in there.
Yeah, totally. We then cut to a first-person POV shot, complete with a knockoff bullshit ki ma ma ma. It's approaching Tamara and Ava, but it turns out it's just Charles. So again, we have one of those false killer point of view moments that I really dislike.
Charles asks if the two of them were doing drugs, and they, of course, deny it. And I guess this is enough to change the subject for Charles, because he tells Tamara that he'll be stopping by her stateroom in exactly 15 minutes if her biology project isn't done. And if it's not done, he's going to be calling her parents. And I really don't know, why does she have homework to do on this school trip?
Yeah, isn't this a graduation voyage? So if she still had work to turn in, is she graduating? Like, what if she didn't turn it in and then didn't get to graduate but went on the trip? That's weird. And why would you arrange to have her turning it in on a boat?
Right. Like, what makes him think that she's still going to have an opportunity to finish this project while they're on this trip? Like, they should have just prevented her from going on the trip at all unless the project was done. But whatever. She's got this science project that she needs to be done in 15 minutes.
Right. Hopefully she started. I don't know how this moment played 30 years ago, but in this day and age, it's a little bit creepy and comes off sort of like he's trying to lure her back to her private stateroom for, hanky-panky or something uncomfortable.
After Charles walks away, Tamara is convinced that the reason that Charles walked up on them right as they finished doing drugs was because Rennie narked on them. So Tamara decides that she's going to concoct a little plan to get back at Rennie because she knows that she's afraid of water. Which
we are just learning for the first time. I mean, everyone seems to know that, but we don't know why.
Yeah, I can't really tell what Rennie's status is within the high school class. Is she popular? Is she unpopular? Is she kind of on the fringe? She's a very pretty girl, but I don't get the feeling that she's particularly well liked. And is that just because she's standoffish or what. It's hard to tell where she kind of fits into the class status.
Yeah, I get the sense that she's maybe a little bit distant from the group. You know, her main pastime is writing, which is a very solitary activity. Everyone's amazed that she came on this trip, you know, because of whatever trauma she suffered, but also maybe just sort of like, oh, we didn't think you were into this kind of thing. She doesn't seem to fit in anywhere other than hanging out with Sean. Some random guy, we never see his face, but it turns out it's the boxer who got his ass kicked, goes into the sauna on board and puts some steaming water on the hot rocks, lays down and covers his face with a towel. Jason lumbers in, grabs a rock, and I love that he kind of has no fucks to give about the pain from the heat.
Well, he is wearing a pair of gloves, though, so he's not a complete badass.
That's true. He does have some protection. But then with this hot rock in his fist, he plunges it into the guy's chest. And I don't really understand that. Why did he need the rock? And what difference did it make whether or not it was hot?
That's a good point. Yeah, because the fist would have done plenty of damage, but maybe the steaming rock just makes for, you know, a more aesthetic kill that satisfies Jason more.
Yeah, maybe. We do get a nice overhead shot of the bloody hole in the dead body, but overall it was kind of a lame kill. I was not able to find who played the dead guy. The boxer in the earlier scene was played by David Jaycox, who's an actor and a stuntman. He most recently appeared in the second season of the Fargo TV series.
Yeah, most of his other credits are stunt work in a shit ton of movies, but the most important thing to point out is that he appeared in Slam Dunk Ernest.
Awesome. Apparently this sauna scene was shot after principal photography, so that's why they had to cover the person's face, because David Jaycox wasn't available to play his character's death. It's somebody else entirely, but again, I wasn't able to find exactly who. Rennie has apparently given up her search for the dog because she's now strolling around up on deck with Colleen, her teacher, but she does look directly at camera, which I found amusing.
As Rennie's walking on the deck, Tamara and Eva sneak up behind her, and Tamara shoulder checks her, but it's not exactly subtle, and it knocks Rennie into the water. First of all, it's nighttime, and they're out on the lake or river or ocean, wherever the hell they are, and it's at least a 30-foot drop down in the water. So this little prank is actually incredibly fucking dangerous. But more importantly, there are no railings on the side of the ship where she falls over. It's just an open gap. So, like, how did this ship pass the inspections that allowed the high school to be like, yeah, this is a great place for us to hold our graduation party?
Yeah, especially if you're going to have drunk teenagers staggering around on deck in a storm at night. Rennie hits the water, and someone does throw a life ring to her, but she panics and goes under. She sees her leg being pulled down by a little boy with a full head of hair, but some minor facial disfigurement. She's, terrified, but kicks free and manages to get her head above water as finally somebody, it's Sean, jumps in to help her.
Tamara and Eva walk away, and Tamara is especially satisfied by her little prank, but Eva's kind of disgusted by what just happened, rightfully so, and ends up ditching Tamara. Now that Rennie is safely back on deck, the first thing Colleen asks her is if she cares to talk about it, which probably isn't the first thing you should say to someone after they nearly died.
Yeah, let's go have a chat. And Sean helpfully comes back with some towels, but he hands them to Colleen instead of Rennie.
Charles shows up because he's just like Bad News Cruise. He's always lurking around a corner, and he blames Colleen and Sean for what happened for some reason. And as Charles is walking away with Rennie trying to console her, they run into Crazy Nautical Ralph, who declares that he's come back and you're all going to die. And this allows Rennie to break free from Charles, and she storms off. She ends up in her bathroom showing virtually no side effects from her near-death experience aside from mild annoyance, and she starts to wash her hands for some reason. And we get the tired old effect of blood coming out of the faucet, but Rennie's too busy looking in the mirror to notice. But what she does notice is what appears to be a young Ken Jeong leaping out of the mirror and grabbing her. It's obviously not Ken Jeong, but I guess it's supposed to be the little boy who grabbed her underwater only moments ago. But I swear every time we see this little kid, his appearance is changing a little bit each and every time.
Yeah, yeah. And when he fades out, she even still hears some ghostly laughter. It's kind of bizarre. It's getting increasingly bizarre. Charles, meanwhile, has arrived to review Tamara's biology project, only to find her in her stateroom wearing a silk robe and sipping champagne like she's a MILF in a video on Pornhub. She drops the silk robe to reveal that she's drawn some diagram-like pictures on herself of bones, a stomach, her heart, and arrows pointing to her boobs and vag. She kisses him and pushes him on the bed, and he doesn't put up nearly enough of a fight, in my opinion.
I've got a serious problem with this scene for that exact reason. It's just, there's virtually no resistance on Charles' part. You know, you would think that an authority figure in this position, so to speak, would just immediately push Tamara off of him, but they don't. They kind of linger a little bit, and, you know, he's twice her size, so it's not like, you know, he's, you know, having any trouble, you know, pushing her off. But yeah, it's really creepy how long this kind of lingers before it finally stops.
Yeah, you know, he huffs and puffs, and, you know, after way too long, finally kind of, you know, gets her off of him. Unfortunately, there's a POV shot of a video camera approaching. It's Wayne who's helping Tamara blackmail Charles. He tosses Tamara the videotape, which she stashes under the robe that she's just put back on, and, you know, Charles storms off, defeated by this subterfuge.
So do you think that Tamara blackmailed Charles just to get out of doing her biology project? Because that seems like a very convoluted plan to get out of doing homework.
Yeah, good point. A lot of effort into getting out of something that would probably be less effort to just do. I wonder if there was some other infraction that he had her on the hook for that we don't know about. You know, he's obviously stumbled upon her, you know, about to use drugs or having just used drugs. Maybe she had some sort of, you know, drinking at school thing on her rap sheet that he was holding over her head too, or something. But yeah, that's a really good question.
I'd also love to know what the actual biology project was supposed to be.
That should be a deleted scene, like, or, you know, if they ever remake this movie, they can include that.
It makes like one of those baking soda and vinegar volcanoes.
So Charles leaves in a huff. Wayne then takes a moment to confess that he has the hots for her, but she blows, I'm not done, him off. And I actually really kind of like her hot and cold manipulation acting here. It's really fun. She's, you know, playing it a little, you know, like super sweet and kindly, but giving him the brush off hardcore. Where, you know, moments ago she was kind of this ice queen and obviously good at using men in ways that benefit her. So I really dig what she pulled off here. As Wayne walks away dejected, we see Jason peek out of the stateroom next door. Why was he hiding in there? Did he like have to take a dump or something?
Right. The only thing I can think is that we don't really see Jason ever take on multiple people at once. And so maybe he was making his way down to Tamara's room, but then very quickly it became Tamara, Charles, and Wayne. And he's like, this might be, you know, pushing my luck a little bit. So he's like, I'm just going to back off and wait till, you know, this crowd dies down.
Oh, that's a good point. He is much more of an ambush guy, and he doesn't want somebody to, you know, someone else nearby who might get away and warn everyone else. That's interesting. You're right.
Tamara is in the shower finishing washing off her biology project, and while she's toweling off in the bathroom, Jason slowly opens the door to Tamara's room, which is right next door. Tamara hears something and peeks her head out of the shower room and sees Jason sneaking into the adjacent room, which I thought was really cool because we don't really get a lot of shots of Jason with his guard down. Usually he's, you know, in full on stalking mode or, you know, aggressively approaching someone. But here he's like, he doesn't know what his next move is yet. He's peeking his head in the room like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And he doesn't see Tamara see him. And I thought that was a really nice scene.
Yeah, I like that we've never really seen him being observed without him knowing it. That was a cool moment. It made me chuckle at first, but then you're right. I kind of like that.
It would have been great if when Tamara saw him, he was like scratching his nuts or something.
Yeah, with those wet pants on, he's probably got some chafing.
Yeah, some serious crotch rot.
She's pressing her ear against the door to listen, to what's going on. And he then smashes a hand through the wood, grabbing her robe and shoving her so hard that she smashes her head against the bathroom mirror. It's a pretty obvious wig on the stunt woman, but it's pretty great, and it's surprisingly brutal.
Jason then busts his way into the bathroom and carefully examines the shards of mirror in the sink until he finds one that's just right. And as Tamara is cowering in the corner of the shower stall, Jason winds up with that mirror shard in his hand and begins to strike. But that's where this episode ends.
2 casualties this time, the faceless boxer guy and Charles's boner when Wayne catches him on camera with a half-naked Tamara.
To find out what I've painted on my body to show Greg later, tune in next week. Until then, you're all gonna die!